In the shadowy depths of Terra's dusty vaults, where ancient scrolls and time-worn data slates whisper tales of a time long past, there's a tale that chills my very soul, a story of betrayal so deep, it forever altered the trajectory of humanity's saga. This chilling chronicle is known as the Site Massacre, an infamous chapter of the Horus Heresy. As an imperial historiator, I traverse these dimly lit alleys of our history, piecing together the veiled horrors buried therein. Istvan V, a once innocent world, now forever stained with the mark of treachery. Just when the galaxy seemed poised at the brink of unity, at the climax of the Great Crusade, seeds of sedition silently germinated. Once the shining jewel in the Emperor's crown, Horus was now lost, trapped by shadows. Lured away by the intoxicating allure of power, ambition and malevolent promises, he wasn't alone. Other Primarchs, once loyal brothers, now walked this path of darkness with him. In all his wisdom, the Emperor did catch wind of Horus's sinister deviation. With hope to curb this budding rebellion, a legion of loyalist Astartes, a force to reckon with, was unleashed upon Istvan V. Their task, to rein in the defiant War Master. The scene was set. 7 formidable Space Marine legions descended, with 4 purportedly loyalist legions ready to challenge the rebels, while 3 others patiently bided their time. There was hope, albeit fleeting, that Horus's insurrection would be promptly crushed. But having scoured those brittle pages of antiquity, I've unearthed a grievous truth. Treachery's tendrils had crept far more profound than anyone had fathomed. As blades clashed and former comrades faced off, the true extent of the deception dawned. The sheer gravity of this atrocity, the abyss of its implications, haunts even me. Trust and kinship, the bedrock of brotherhood, crumbled in one devastating blow. As we venture further into this dark tale, remember that our history isn't merely a recounting of bygones. It is a cautionary tale for all generations of the Imperium, echoing through the corridors of time. Picture a time before the memory of the Site Massacre, a golden age when the Emperor's dreams of a unified galaxy bound by humanity seemed more than just tales for a dreary night, but a future on the horizon. Darkness waits even in the brightest tales. Horus Lupercal, the War Master, the Emperor's chosen, found himself in the crosshairs of the great enemy. They whispered dark lies, pulling him into a dance of power and ambition. The crescendo hit at Istvan III, Horus's grand opening act of betrayal. Following this blood-soaked performance, the Emperor thought he'd bring down the curtain on this rebellion. He believed in the harmony of his sons and in that belief hoped for one last chance of unity. While the ghostly outlines of Horus's betrayals were evident, the accurate scale, the heart of his dark desires, remained hidden in the fog. The Emperor called his loyal sons to arms with the same swift decisiveness that a father might react to a child's misdeeds. 4 legendary legions, Iron Hands, Salamanders, Raven Guard and Night Lords, led by their iconic Primarchs, roaring to lead the fray against the rebellious shadow of Horus on Istvan V. These were the heroes of countless campfire tales, the veterans of the Great Crusade. Every child in the Imperium, lying in their beds, would have heard of their exploits, massive battleships and cruisers, reminiscent of the tall tales of sea ships, set sail for Istvan V. You could almost hear the buzz on the Vox channels, the echoing oaths of loyalty, the clinks of raised glasses in mess halls. As battle plans were drawn, the atmosphere was electric, a storm of vengeance brewing for Horus and his misguided. But among these heroes, camouflaged by trust and brotherhood, were those with divided allegiances. The Word-bearers, Alpha Legion and Iron Warriors, the Judases of this tale, had secretly pledged themselves to Horus's sinister cause. This tragic oversight, this dark underbelly, would soon unfurl a tragedy. It's a haunting tableau to consider, especially from where we stand now, looking back through the mists of time. These valiant warriors, their hearts aflame with righteous fury, marching into what they believed was a battle of good versus evil. As the Loyalist fleet entered the vast black of the Istvan system, the fleet was enveloped by an unsettling silence. It was the same eerie quiet one might experience just before a storm hits. Despite this, Three Primarchs, Ferrus Manus, Vulcan, and Corax, stood resolute, leading their troops in the spirit of ancient town heroes, ready to face whatever lurked in the shadows. Their entry was almost too smooth, the waters too calm. Horus's forces held back, like a beast lurking in the woods, watching, waiting. At the time, this was seen as a falter in their step, maybe even a crack in their resolve. Feeling empowered, perhaps even invincible, the Loyalists initiated their descent. From the skies they rained down, drop pods crashing like hailstones and Thunderhawk gunships roaring in, releasing wave after wave of Astartes. They chose to stand their ground on the vast Urgal Depression, a seemingly perfect battlefield akin to an open field, a place where dangers could be spotted from a distance. For a time, things looked up. With military precision, the Loyalists advanced, pushing back Horus's forces. The sound of combat, steel, and shouted promises to the Emperor filled the air. Yet, as they ventured further into the heart of the Depression, a chill of dread began to seep in. Behind them, the three legions they had trusted, those they thought had their backs, took up positions. Suddenly, the vast open field didn't seem like an advantage. It felt like the eerie streets of terror, where you could turn a corner and face your worst fears. The realization was suffocating. They were surrounded. From where we sit now, safe in our habs and away from the horrors of war, it's a gut-wrenching thought to imagine the dawning terror in the eyes of those Loyalists. Once a symbol of hope, that battlefield was rapidly becoming a tombstone. And as the first rains fell on Istvan V, so too would the Emperor's faithful in the tragic Site Massacre. Every shot fired, every blade swung, echoed with the hope of overcoming the insidious influence of Horus. And for a time, it seemed like those traitorous legions were losing ground, retreating like bullies confronted with unwavering courage. Their allies, the Iron Warriors, Word-Bearers, and Alpha Legion, were not coming to their aid. Instead, they were the newest monsters in this nightmare. Much like the unsettling feeling of being watched in a supposedly empty room, the Loyalists were surrounded, entrapped by foes on all sides. The air echoed with guttural cries of traitor Astartes as they swarmed over the seasoned ranks of the Iron Hands. The latter's brave souls, who once spoke of honor in hushed tones over campfires, faced overwhelming odds. Their valorous decision to stand their ground, rather than flee with their brethren, would be both their triumph and doom. The battlefield bore witness to a grim spectacle, as the Raven Guard faltered like actors in a twisted play, their defenses torn apart by an onslaught of bolter fire. The once proud warriors, now clad in tarnished black armor, crumpled under the barrage, their final moments marked by exploding armor and ephemeral mists of crimson. It was a scene straight out of one of those old Pict movies, but infinitely more terrifying. In the chaos, the Iron Warriors and Word-Bearers worked grimly efficiently, reloading and shooting, tossing grenades and plotting their next move. Their position to the west provided an eerie vantage point, ready to unleash hell on the Raven Guard's flank. The sounds of battle were deafening, gunfire thundering like summer storms, blades clashing, and a chorus of cries filled the air. Above them, a once clear sky transformed into a canvas of chaos, with streaks of black smoke and silhouettes of war. The land, reminiscent of the battles of old terror, soon bore witness to a maelstrom of violence, as blood painted the ground in hues of sacrifice. Epic confrontations ensued. Every surge of hope from the Loyalists was met with an onslaught of treachery. The Loyalists' bravery, echoing the determination of those who once faced the shadows of their doubt, shone brightly but was constantly tested. Corax and his Raven Guard, reminiscent of the cunning and unpredictability of children playing tricks to evade a relentless predator, retaliated using guile and surprise. But slowly, inevitably, they were pushed back. Vulcan's salamanders held out, forming islands of defiance. But even the brightest flames can be smothered by a suffocating evil. At the heart of this malevolence was the tragic face-off between two once beloved leaders, akin to old friends who had grown apart, with one succumbing to the pull of the darkness. The confrontation was more than a physical clash. It was the death of trust, the annihilation of brotherhood, a tear in the fabric of what it meant to be loyal. I'm immediately struck by the palpable sense of sorrow that clings to every word of the records, like the cold dampness in a hab. Ferrus Manus wasn't just any hero. He was a symbol, a beacon in the darkest corners of the galaxy. With his unique, almost eerie living metal hands, he embodied the resilience and steadfastness of the Iron Hands Legion. And yet, despite his formidable stature, he was, in the end, profoundly human in his love for his brothers. The setting of Istvan V, where Ferrus would face his destiny, is painted in the hues of an approaching storm, where dread mingles with the electric charge of anticipation. It's a place where treachery and honor would collide in a dance as old as time itself. Godlike figures, Ferrus and Fulgrim, each a masterpiece of creation, now standing as adversaries, where brothers turn against one another over old grudges or dark secrets. The earth beneath them rumbles as if protesting the very nature of their confrontation, the tragic tearing apart of a bond once unbreakable. Their duel, both fierce and heart-wrenching, is portrayed not as a mere clash of weapons, but as a more profound, soulful conflict, a battle between the steadfast loyalty of Ferrus and the insidious shadow that had taken hold of Fulgrim. One can almost hear the clang of their weapons, the roars of pain and rage, and the heartbeats of thousands watching in horrified suspense. The climax of this cosmic tragedy, the moment when Fulgrim, his soul lost to the whispers of chaos, struck down his own brother. The horror of that act, the murder of trust and unity, is reminiscent of those tales of fratricide in hushed voices. For in the shadows of this tremendous galactic conflict lies a universal truth, one we've seen play out before, the profound pain and destruction that can arise when bonds of brotherhood, once thought unbreakable, are shattered. In the eerie half-light of Istvan V, where the mist hung thick and the ground was forever damp with the blood of loyal and traitors alike, there lurked the ethereal phantoms, the Raven Guard. Led by Corax, their very presence was the stuff of legends. Masters of ghostly warfare were more akin to shadows than soldiers, coming to life only to deliver swift justice before vanishing into the night. But the stage had changed now. No longer were they fighting in the obscurity of shadow and silence. On this cursed land, every stealth tactic and strategy was laid bare for the world to see. Their enemies, the Word-Bearers, had once stood tall, echoing the Emperor's decrees with fierce loyalty. Now, led by the passionate Lorgar Aurelian, they'd mutated into twisted zealots, whispering not holy edicts, but sinister chants that reached out hungrily into the void. Istvan V's grim backdrop, especially the slaughter-drenched plains of the Urgol Depression, became a nightmarish theatre for these two factions. As the tide of battle raged, Corax's soldiers, with their art of stealth, had to bring to bear every bit of guile they possessed to weather the storm of the Word-Bearers' frenzied charge. But the stories, those age-old tales tucked away in dusty volumes, speak of more than just a physical onslaught. Indeed, the Raven Guard, with their swift and ghostly strikes, wreaked havoc among Lorgar's minions. But with each shadow play, the Word-Bearers retaliated with fanaticism, their voices raised in eldritch chants that drew power from the most forbidden corners of the cosmos. It wasn't simply the raw might of the Word-Bearers that haunted the Raven Guard. It was the sheer weight of their madness, the twisted hymns that sought to rip apart the very soul of an enemy. With every encounter, it became clear, this was not just a war of weapons. It was a clash of beliefs, of hopes, and of the very essence of what it means to be faithful. And as the dark clouds of treachery coalesced, despite their mastery of ambush, the Raven Guard found themselves outmatched. Yet in the shadow of great tragedy and staggering losses, their spirit, their dedication to the Emperor's dream never faltered. It burned even brighter against the backdrop of betrayal. It was a land betrayed, where brothers had forsaken the sacred oaths they swore under the Emperor's watchful gaze. But what came next, under the sinister guidance of Horus, wasn't just a betrayal. It was a spectacle, a morbid show meant for the eyes of both gods and men. Above, the heavens roared with anger, or perhaps mourning. It was a rain not of water, but of fire, death, and despair. From phosphex that hungered for the touch of flesh, eating through both armor and bone, to insidious viruses that melted once proud warriors into grotesque puddles, the cruelty of the traitors knew no bounds. Every corner of the forsaken landscape screamed in agony. Yet amidst this hellfire, there was another battle, one not of bodies but of minds. Horus sought not just to defeat, but to break, to shatter spirits, hopes, and dreams, to send a message that echoed through the stars. The Emperor could be defied in all his glory. The remaining loyalist Astartes, proud and resolute, were ensnared in a nightmare. Their once gleaming armors were now tarnished tales of horror, and with each passing second, their ranks grew thinner. But in their eyes, even surrounded by molten earth and darkened skies, the Emperor's light still shone defiantly. A suffocating blanket of ash and despair hung heavy over Istvan V, turning day into an endless, mournful dusk. It was as if the very universe wept, seeing the heart of the Imperium draped in shadows. Yet even in this abyss, heroes rose. Tales whispered among the stars speak of pockets of Astartes, resolute and undaunted, standing side by side. They tell of last breaths taken in defense of a brother, of war cries that echoed even as the world burned around them. These tales, born amidst the betrayal, are shining beacons amidst the darkness, symbols of an undying faith in the Emperor's vision. But Horus's chance at a complete victory failed, for the Loyalists fought on, and his victory was not done. As long as the Imperium endures, the cries from Istvan V will forever echo, a somber testament to the price of betrayal. Istvan V felt less like a planet and more like a grotesque mural painted with despair. Its once thriving landscapes now bore the scars of betrayal, littered with the silent remains of Astartes, who'd once marched with purpose and pride. But as the last glimmers of daylight were snuffed out, the absolute terror began. Night didn't bring solace, it brought out the monsters. The order from the War Master Horus was chillingly simple. By the first light of dawn, no heart loyal to the Emperor should still beat. This was not just war. It was an annihilation of hope, of faith, of the very soul of resistance. Like beasts set upon wounded prey, the traitor legions dispersed into the night, hungry for the blood of any loyalist left breathing. It wasn't combat, it was carnage. The beleaguered loyalists, many barely clinging to life, were now the quarry in a macabre hunt. Every shadow held potential death. Every whisper of wind carried the scent of treachery. The stories from that unholy night, told in hushed tones by those who somehow endured, paint a picture of a hellish descent into madness. Brothers, who once stood shoulder to shoulder in the Emperor's light, now reveled in the dark, each act of betrayal more gruesome than the last. Freed from their sacred oaths, they indulged in a malevolent dance of death and darkness. Forbidden chronicles speak of the word-bearers, driven by a malefic zeal, subjecting their captured kin to vile rituals, and they sought to corrupt not just the flesh, but the very soul. The World-Eaters, with their insatiable bloodlust, tore through the night with a frenzy that walked the line between awe and horror. But even amidst such profound darkness, sparks of valor endured. Legends tell of isolated pockets of loyalists defying the night, of brave souls laying down their lives for their brothers, and of the unyielding spirit of humanity that refused to bow, even when facing the abyss. That night of butchery, as it has come to be called, is a mournful song of the human soul, showing both its capacity for unthinkable evil and undying bravery. In the malevolent grip of the massacre, when the very concept of hope became a mocking spectre, Corax found himself on the precipice. This wasn't a leader who knew surrender, nor warriors who would bow to deception. From the chasm of deceit, Corax, with the tattered remnants of his once majestic legion, waged a fierce battle against the enveloping shadow. The treacherous contours of Istvan V had mutated into a veritable maze of mortality. Yet amidst this desolation, the Raven Guard's innate prowess shone. Experts in the art of guerrilla warfare, they ingeniously turned the warped terrain into their battleground, launching covert strikes that confounded their more numerous adversaries. Ruins became their sanctuaries. Every scrap of shadow was a lurking threat. Amidst this chaos, Corax was nothing short of a phantom of retribution. Piecemeal accounts, stitched together from scattered testimonials, narrate the tale of a Primarch whose rage against his brethren's treachery was equaled only by his resolve to shield his legion. He flowed through the battlefield, not as a man, but as an apparition, materializing where least anticipated and leaving chaos trailing behind. But this narrative wasn't solely about the dance of war. Intertwined with combat tales are intimate moments showcasing Corax's profound connection with his men. One particularly heart-wrenching recollection speaks of Corax discovering a severely injured captain from his legion. Instead of pressing forward, Corax is believed to have stood steadfast with the captain, warding off a relentless tide of traitors, ensuring this lone guardian of deliverance wouldn't confront the abyss in solitude. As the relentless passage of time bore its weight and the looming shadow threatened to consume them, the Raven Guard's spirit remained unbroken. They found inspiration in Corax, and he, in return, drew courage from them. It became a testament not just of survival, but to the enduring soul of their legion, a fierce cry of rebellion against the all-consuming darkness that threatened to swallow the cosmos. The saga of Corax and his Raven Guard, with Istvan V as their crucible, stands luminous in the Imperium's chronicles. It serves as a poignant echo, reminding us that even when ensnared by staggering betrayal and impossible odds, the indomitable essence of humanity, reflected in its heroes, can pierce through even the most suffocating night. Amid the twilight hours of the struggle on Istvan V, chronicled painstakingly in the sacred pages of the Imperium, lies a melancholic weave of heroism juxtaposed with grief, a place where the flickering embers of optimism clashed with the engulfing flood of deceit. As the vestiges of the Forsaken Legions felt the cold embrace of hopelessness, they weren't left to fade into obscurity. Over the charred expanses and fractured fortresses, scattered loyalists, like beacons in the overwhelming night, staged their own desperate resistance. Each confrontation, every relentless assault, signified more than just resilience. It was a heart-wrenching dirge for the once radiant dream of a united Imperium. In the midst of such desolation, when the heavens themselves seemed to rain down tears of ash, emerged stories that would etch themselves into legend. Chronicles tell of a tenacious group of salamanders who formed a steadfast barrier around a makeshift infirmary. Their fire-tinged banners, symbolizing their eternal resolve, fluttered defiantly as they repelled wave after wave of attackers, ensuring every last wounded loyalist found sanctuary. The remnants of the Iron Hands, shadowed by the devastating demise of Ferrus Manus, became embodiments of retribution. Their mechanized monstrosities, alongside warriors enhanced by the sterile touch of technology, stood like impenetrable walls, dispensing the Emperor's wrath upon any treacherous soul daring enough to challenge them. But amidst these pockets of unyielding spirit, the more immense panorama painted a harrowing truth. The Loyalists were on the brink. The traitor legions, now empowered and guided by the seductive murmurs from the warp, pressed forth with unstoppable momentum. Their solidarity, birthed not from camaraderie, but a shared treachery, rendered them an indomitable torrent. The poignant essence of those grim times can be captured in a salvaged image, depicting a solitary loyalist, his armor battered and charred, bracing against the onslaught of traitors. Alone amidst the remnants of a city that once bustled with life, he defiantly discharges his bolt gun until his final breath. His name may be lost to the annals of history, yet his resilient stance has become emblematic of the steadfast spirit of those loyal to the Emperor. Thus, as the betrayers stamped their mark of treachery, Istvan V stood as a mournful monument to the devastating price of deception. The planet, once pulsating with life, now lay silent, its very atmosphere echoing not with vitality, but with the haunting reverberations of a cosmic calamity. As the abyss of the Site Massacre deepened, it looked as if hope had been thoroughly extinguished. But even as treachery's cloak sought to smother the light, the Raven Guard, steered by the unwavering spirit of their Primarch, resisted the gathering gloom. The ashes of their decimated ranks sprouted a singular defiance, casting its steadfast luminescence against the dark. Istvan V etched with the scars of relentless battle, and in its deep crevices and towering ridges, the Raven Guard found a fortress. Echoing the predatory elegance of the very birds they were named after, they melded into the rugged landscape, launching surprise assaults only to melt back into the obscurity. Their warfare was as ephemeral as shadows, a dance of ghostly figures striking with precision, emblematic of their unparalleled guerrilla prowess. Corvus Corax, burdened by the sting of betrayal, steered his brethren with a frosty, burning rage. Pieced together from fragmented communications of those who survived, tales circulate of Corax descending upon foes, a phantasm of vengeance, his pallid visage contorted with grief and wrath. Yet, despite their artistry in battle, despite their unyielding spirit, they were vastly outnumbered. Their backs were gradually pushed against the wall, their strength eroding. Istvan V was poised to be their graveyard. However, in their twilight hours, They ensured that their adversaries bled for every step taken, for every comrade fallen. Their swan song resonated at the foot of the Whispering Mountain. Here the remnants of the Raven Guard staged their culminating resistance. With Corax leading the charge, they clashed with the traitors in an epic symphony of combat, reverberating through ages. A meld of raw passion pitted against insurmountable forces, punctuated by cries, roars, and the relentless echo of bolter shots. Their stand wasn't a traditional triumph. It didn't reshape the course of the conflict or deliver a crippling hit to the traitors, but it was a moral win, a tribute to the relentless soul of the Emperor's elite. To the present-day Imperium, it echoes as a poignant parable of loyalty's weight, the value of honor, and the timeless spirit of those who remain unbowed in the face of oblivion. In a world where chaos ran rampant, Corvus Corax, ever the cunning strategist, recognized the bleak truth. Taking on the frenzied World Eaters head-to-head on open ground was akin to walking willingly into the madness. So, he opted for the terrains that played to his strength, the twisted mazes of canyons and the jagged abyssal ravines crisscrossing Istvan V. The game plan was deceptively simple. Lure the World Eaters into carefully plotted ambushes, strike with ferocity, then dissolve into the shadows, buying precious seconds as the sands of time ran down. Because for the Raven Guard, the battle wasn't about achieving a definitive victory. It was a race against time. Every tick of the clock was a lifeline stretching thin. Hovering above Istvan V's charred atmosphere, ships designated to whisk away what remained of the Loyalist troops were hurtling through the vastness of space. However, seasoned as they were in guerrilla combat, the Raven Guard quickly realized the World Eaters weren't opponents to be taken lightly. The World Eaters, with their manic onslaughts, displaying a reckless disregard for peril or plan, often bulldozed through the Guard's snares. Planned withdrawals morphed into frantic close-quarter combats. On several occasions, Corax was compelled to step in, his claws flashing like bolts of lightning, attempting to purchase a few more heartbeats for his brethren. In the midst of this orchestrated chaos, a pivotal moment materialized. The rescue ships, stark against Istvan V's blazing inferno, started their downward trajectory. It was a flicker of hope for the Raven Guard, but it also stoked the World Eaters' obsessive drive to annihilate them before they could vanish into the safety of the cosmos. The battle that ensued could only be described as a maelstrom of sheer brutality. The Raven Guard, buoyed by the imminent promise of escape, rallied with newfound determination. In contrast, the World Eaters, propelled by a bloodlust that seemed to touch the primordial, threw themselves at their enemies with a fury that defied reason. Heroes rose and fell in those defining instants, their legends now uttered in hushed, reverent tones. Yet, for every gallant feat, there lay a heartbreaking narrative, a warrior succumbing just as salvation loomed close. The air was thick, laden with not just the tang of dust and the acrid stench of smoke, but with palpable despair, sorrow, and raw urgency. But as the mists dissipated and the battle waned, a significant fraction of the Raven Guard found solace within the confines of the rescue ships. They departed from a realm marred by treachery, a graveyard of allies and adversaries, but they also emerged with an indomitable spirit intact, bearing with them the haunting chronicle of their harrowing journey and the weight of undying allegiance. As I draw this recollection of the Site Massacre to its somber conclusion, it's vital that we recognize its place within the overarching narrative of the Imperium's history. This dark chapter serves as both a testament to the monumental betrayal that nearly tore humanity apart and a beacon of the indomitable spirit of loyalty and sacrifice that remains a cornerstone of our present Imperium. A millennia removed from those fateful events, we still feel the ripples of Istvan V. The very mention of this massacre evokes a depth of emotion and reflection that is unparalleled. It reminds us of the fragility of trust, the cost of pride, and the unpredictable nature of alliances. Walking through the vast halls of the Imperial Archives, one cannot escape its shadow. The countless records, testimonies, and artifacts housed therein are silent witnesses to a time when gods walked amongst men and brothers turned upon brothers, and while history is often written by the victors, the tragedy of the Site Massacre transcends such simplifications. It's a shared scar, a lesson on the price of betrayal. And so, as we conclude, let us take a moment of introspection. Let the weight of history sink in, and let the courage and steadfastness of the Loyalists inspire us. In a galaxy teeming with threats, both from within and without, let the memory of Istvan be our eternal reminder. Let it be the beacon that guides us through our darkest hours, affirming that even in the face of insurmountable odds, the spirit of humanity, driven by loyalty and faith, can and will endure. In remembrance of the Drop Site Massacre, we march forward, carrying the torch of their legacy, for the Emperor, for the Imperium, forevermore.